Hello, my name is Toby Guerin, and I'm the Managing Director of the Center for Dispute Resolution at the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. Today I'm going to talk about the topics of giving and receiving feedback. This segment will focus on receiving feedback. If I asked you to think about a positive feedback experience, you could probably come up with something. It would be a statement provided to you by someone that you respect, maybe a coach, mentor, colleague. It is likely to be given in a private setting and contains specific information. If I asked you to think of a negative feedback experience, the qualities that made it negative would almost be the opposite. It may contain all three of these things. It could be in a public setting, someone you don't respect, or contain no specific information. Or sometimes it's just any one of those that makes the feedback a negative experience. Sometimes, however, it is just the context or perceived malintent that makes it a negative experience. I can give you an example from my own life. I do a lot of mediation, and we often use a co-mediation model, mediating with someone else. And at the end of it is expected that you have a conversation with your co-mediator about the things that each of you did well and the areas for improvement. And I remember my co-mediator started, and she really didn't have much information to provide for me. And then it was my turn, and I had a few comments about things that she did well and things that she could improve. And it was only after I provided my feedback that she then had information to provide to me. And this was an example of where the feedback given was in a private setting. It was expected, but the fact that she didn't have anything to say until I said something really made it not as positive an experience. In that case, it was the context that made the feedback experience a negative one. Feedback is part of our daily lives. Every day we receive feedback in the forms of opinions from others. It could be the quality of the food that we prepared, edits on a document that we wrote, or comments about the time that we arrived in the office or leave the office. We process these statements all the time without even realizing it. There's a lot of information out there in books and on the internet, throughout the workplace, about giving feedback, but there's very little on receiving feedback. Today I'm going to review a simple tool that you can use to receive feedback in a more conscious and beneficial way. I call it the triple A's of receiving feedback: acknowledge, assess, and action. Receiving feedback is a skill within itself. We often hold different views of ourselves than others have of us. Even if we agree with what a person states, we might not want to hear it, or hear it from that person. There's a process you can conduct to assess your personal comfort with the feedback that you receive. You can then determine whether the feedback is something you are willing to accept or reject. I want to start with the analogy of feedback as a gift. It is one person's thoughts or opinions that they are choosing to give to someone else. Like traditional gifts provided on birthdays or holidays, it is being given with the intent that it is useful, beneficial, or desired by the recipient. Sometimes you get that birthday present that you never asked for and is just what you needed. Sometimes you get the gift that makes you question whether the giver even knows who you are, or whether you would ever have any need for something like this. And sometimes you receive a gift that's not what you wanted at the time, but you save it and find out later that you have use for it. Think of feedback in the same way. It is a gift given with the intention that it is beneficial, useful, and desired. Sometimes it's all three, sometimes it's none of them. Sometimes it doesn't fit for you at all, but makes sense later. With this in mind, we have the ability to put feedback into three categories: valid, invalid, and difference of opinion. Valid, that gift that you really wanted. Invalid, that gift that you never wanted and have no use for. And difference of opinion, maybe that gift that you hold on to and look back at later. So the first step that you want to do when receiving feedback is to acknowledge it. Begin by welcoming all feedback as the legitimate observation and opinion of another person. Note that this does not mean that you have to agree with it, but it is just what the other person thinks. By acknowledging it, it keeps an open mind to the information. Next, you want to assess it once you've acknowledged it. Determine whether the feedback is valid, invalid, or a difference of opinion. So I kind of went a little bit further, but I want to pause here. Okay. All right. You can do this by asking yourself a few questions. First, have I heard this before? If you have, chances are that the information is more likely valid than invalid. What is the experience of the person providing me with this information? Do I think that they have an ulterior motive or a hidden agenda? Does this person have more experience than me, an experience in a way that I would give some value to what they say? Does this person have different experiences in this particular subject than me? And by different, that might lead you to believe that their comments are maybe a difference of opinion, or maybe even cause you to say that they were invalid. You also want to ask yourself, on what information is this person basing his or her statement? Is this a direct observation of something that occurred, in which case it may likely be more valid than otherwise? Or is it something that someone heard from someone else? Does this person have all the facts and or the context in which to provide this information? Is the statement about my actions, or do I feel like it is a personal attack, or a statement that's maybe based on something else that's going on in this other person's life? How you answered these questions will help you then determine if you perceive the feedback to be valid, invalid, or a difference of opinion. This will then influence your next step, A, for action. Now that you've decided and categorized the feedback, you need to decide what you want to do with this information. What do you want to do with your gift, so to speak? You could just accept the statement. Whether it's valid, invalid, or a difference of opinion, you always have the option of just accepting it. You could inquire more about the statement, asking the giver for some more information that may help you clarify where the information is coming from. You could explore the statement with others, so maybe turning to someone else at a later time and saying, has John or Sam or whomever ever said this to you before? Knowing whether the statement has been made to others may also help you determine what you want to do with the information. You could also request a second opinion. This is often helpful when you feel like it's a difference of opinion. You could ask someone else to review the document, ask someone else to sit in on a meeting with you, and just let you know what they think. Right? You can use the statement to make changes for the future. So you could take the information, accept it as valid, and then make changes upon that. You can also choose to challenge the statement. If you do this, I urge you to do it in as positive and productive way as possible. So you're not going to turn to the person and say, I don't agree with you. What made you say that? You may turn to them and ask it more as a question. So help me understand where this came from. What makes you say this? And then finally, you could do nothing or ignore the statement, in a sense, disregard it. Sometimes this three-step process occurs instantaneously, and sometimes you need to sit and reflect upon the feedback, working through all three steps in a thoughtful manner. I often say to people that when someone gives you feedback, they are saying how much they care. They may not say it in the best way possible, but if they didn't care for you to improve or to do it differently, they wouldn't have said anything at all. The next time a feedback situation arises, try using the AAAs of receiving feedback: acknowledge, assess, action, and see how it works for you. You may end up with that gift that you never knew you wanted. Thank you, and good luck.